My name is Veronica. I'm 33 years old and work as a certified accountant. Never in my most surreal nightmares did I envisage receiving court documents from my own parents. This unfolded simply because I purchased a house. After 12 years of relentless labor, subsisting on ramen noodles, and saving every single dollar, my reward turned out to be a lawsuit from the people who raised me. Our financial interactions were always complicated, but this situation felt entirely different. Before I delve into this shocking narrative, please share your location in the comments. If you're interested in hearing more about families gone awry, don't forget to like and subscribe. Growing up in the Thomas family meant adhering to extremely strict financial rules that nearly bordered on obsession. My father, Thomas, was the chief financial strategist while my mother, Sandra, unquestioningly followed his directives. Every dollar that came into our household was meticulously recorded in my father's notorious ledgers. These weren't mere budgeting documents, they were detailed records where he logged every expenditure, who incurred it, and whether he deemed it essential or not. At just 7, I received $20 from my grandmother for my birthday, and I was thrilled to finally buy a stuffed animal I had spotted at the mall. However, before I could even place the money in my little unicorn purse, my father intervened. "Veronica, it's crucial to understand money management from a young age," he asserted, seizing the bill from my grasp. $15 will go into your college fund and you can keep $5. Even the remaining $5 had strings attached regarding its usage. This pattern persisted throughout my upbringing. Any money gifted to me for birthdays, holidays, or achievements was swiftly taken and controlled by my parents. They claimed they were instilling financial prudence in me, but in truth, they were making me realize I had no power over my own finances. Our home never truly felt like ours as we moved from one rental property to another throughout my upbringing, sometimes staying in a location for just a year. Despite my parents' stable careers, my father as an insurance claims manager and my mother as a medical office administrator, they proclaimed that owning a home was an economic trap and a burden. "Only fools invest in homes," my father would announce during dinner. "Wise individuals rent and invest their savings instead." I accepted his beliefs wholeheartedly until I was about 14 and observed that our homeowner neighbors appeared much more financially sound than we were. When I pointed this out, my father launched into a half-hour lecture about the differences between visible wealth and actual wealth, explaining how those who owned homes were essentially enslaved by their mortgage obligations. At 16, I was eager for financial independence and secured a job at a local grocery store. I worked weekends and some evenings to balance my studies and employment. My first paycheck brought me a reality check. My father summoned me to the kitchen table to explain his family funding policy. "Given that you live here, share our meals, and use our utilities, you must contribute 70% of your income to the family fund," he stated matter-of-factly. 20% will go to your college fund, which your mother and I oversee, and you can retain 10% for your personal spending. A knot formed in my stomach as I hesitantly handed over 70% of my hard-earned income. My father assured me that the family fund was reserved for household expenses and emergencies, and promised that the college fund would be available upon my high school graduation. The summer before my senior year, when I needed money for a college application workshop, I asked to access some of my college fund. My father's response marked a painful moment in my financial dealings with my parents. "That money isn't liquid, Veronica, it's currently invested. Withdrawals would incur penalties." When I sought more details about the investments, his explanations were vague and inconsistent. Sometimes the funds were in CDs, other times in mutual funds, and occasionally in private investments tied to his work connections. It didn't take long for me to arrive at an unsettling conclusion: the funds were depleted. My parents had been utilizing my earnings to support their own spending habits while maintaining the facade of saving for my future. My father changed cars every 3 years, and my mother owned a vast collection of designer bags she seldom used. Yet, we lived in modest rental homes, and requests for school trips, music lessons, or sports gear were met with theatrical sighs about financial challenges. The stark contrast between their personal spending habits and our family's supposed financial struggles was shocking. By the time I completed high school, a profound sense of betrayal had taken root within me. My parents not only misappropriated a significant portion of my earnings under misleading circumstances, but they also instilled in me financial beliefs focused on their own interests rather than fostering my independence. The funds that were allegedly set aside for my education had disappeared into their personal expenditures, leaving me to confront the reality of college with virtually no money and a severely damaged sense of trust. Upon receiving acceptance letters from colleges, my parents expressed very specific expectations regarding my career direction. My father insisted I should pursue a career in law, arguing it was the most financially sound choice. He would often say that lawyers enjoy job security, and the return on investment for law school is unparalleled. However, throughout high school, I had cultivated a real interest and talent for numbers, particularly in my accounting classes. The structured nature of managing accounts and the ethical principles of sound financial management resonated with me in ways my father's secretive financial practices never did. When I declared my intention to major in accounting, the atmosphere at home shifted dramatically. Accountants are merely overqualified bookkeepers, my father disdained. You're squandering your potential and limiting your earning capacity. In spite of his objections, I enrolled at State University as an accounting major. My parents' reaction was immediate and clear. If I chose not to adhere to their career guidance, they would withdraw their financial support. I wasn't entirely taken aback given their history with my finances, but the reality of having to finance my college education entirely on my own was overwhelming. I spent countless hours in the financial aid office that first semester, applying for every available scholarship, grant, and work-study position. I structured my class schedule around my work commitments, rather than the other way around. Mornings were dedicated to classes, afternoons were for my job at the university bookstore, evenings for the campus call center, and late nights were spent at a local diner on weekends. Sleep became something of a luxury I could rarely enjoy. My living situation in the first semester was similarly modest. I secured the least expensive accommodation, a triple room in the oldest dorm at the university. My roommates included Lucy, a nursing student from Colorado, and Jasmine, who left after just 6 weeks. Lucy quickly became more than just a cohabitant. She was my first genuine friend who empathized with my circumstances without judgment. My parents put money aside for my brother's education but not mine. She shared one night as we studied together at 2 a.m. They claimed nursing was not worthwhile for a woman destined to marry and have children anyway. Lucy and I formed a supportive alliance based on our shared experience of financial neglect from our parents. We often pooled our resources for bulk groceries, shared textbooks whenever possible, and assisted each other during scheduling conflicts with work and important classes. We mastered the art of making ramen noodles resemble a nutritious meal by adding frozen veggies and eggs when finances allowed. In my second year, a pivotal moment in my financial education occurred. Professor Benjamin Wilson, who taught intermediate accounting, recognized my consistent high performance despite my evident fatigue. After one class, he invited me during his office hours, stating, "You have a natural gift for this field. But you are pushing yourself too hard. Have you thought about applying for the accounting department's merit scholarship?" I was unaware that such a scholarship existed. Professor Wilson not only guided me through the application process but also provided an enthusiastic recommendation. This scholarship covered 50% of my tuition for the remaining years, permitting me to reduce my work hours and occasionally get more than 4 hours of sleep a night. More significantly, Professor Wilson became a mentor to me beyond just academics. He shared practical financial insights that contradicted my parents' teachings. Where my father asserted that credit was inherently bad, Professor Wilson taught me the responsible use of credit as a means to establish a financial history. Where my parents believed that homeownership was unwise, he illustrated how his modest home had appreciated in value and offered stability during economic recessions. Financial security isn't about adhering to strict guidelines, he conveyed. It's about making informed choices that align with your values and long-term objectives. This idea was groundbreaking for me. The concept that money could serve as a tool to help forge the life I desired, rather than a limited resource to be hoarded and controlled, transformed my entire outlook. Consequently, I began to delve into personal finance alongside my accounting studies, eagerly absorbing literature on investment strategies and wealth accumulation. This new understanding of finance led to escalating disagreements with my parents during family gatherings. When I broached the subject of establishing a Roth IRA with the modest savings from my reduced work commitments, my father dismissed the notion as tantamount to gambling within a manipulated stock market. When I conveyed Professor Wilson's thoughts on responsibly managing credit, my mother cautioned me that I was falling prey to banking propaganda. The situation reached a climax during my junior year's spring break. I had opted to stay on campus to take on additional shifts, and unexpectedly, my parents showed up. Their true intention was to gain access to my bank accounts. "We're worried about your financial choices," my father stated, sliding a document across the table at the campus cafe. "We would like to be added as authorized users on your accounts to keep an eye on your expenses and savings." I was taken aback by the form. At 20 years old and fully self-supporting, I questioned why they needed that access. "You're making simplistic decisions based on textbook principles," he responded. "You need real-world advice." When I declined, my mother began to cry, stating that my financial independence was fracturing the family. My father suggested that my self-sufficiency indicated selfishness and a lack of gratitude. I stood my ground, and they left without speaking to me for the next 3 months. That summer, rather than returning to my previous home, I rented a low-cost apartment with Lucy and worked full-time at an accounting internship that Professor Wilson had assisted me in acquiring. For the first time, I started to seriously consider a future where I could own my own home, challenging all my parents had taught me about property ownership being a trap. This idea took root, leading me to research mortgage qualifications and savings strategies while finishing my degree. By graduation, I not only managed to support myself financially but also established a small emergency fund and retirement account. I landed a position at a reputable accounting firm, and my relationship with my parents became distant, where we would entirely avoid money discussions. I was unaware that this uneasy truce was just the calm before the impending storm. My entry-level role at Harrington & Associates offered a starting salary that felt astronomical compared to my college income. After budgeting for a modest one-bedroom apartment, work attire, and student loan repayments, I found I had more disposable income than ever. The allure of upgrading my lifestyle was strong, especially in comparison to my colleagues. However, the memory of financial instability was still vivid. Instead of indulging, I created a comprehensive financial plan aimed at home ownership. Based on housing costs, salary forecasts, and savings rates, I estimated it would take about 10 years to save up enough for a down payment on a modest home in a respectable area. This plan required me to continue living like a student despite my professional salary. My apartment mostly featured thrift store furniture and marketplace bargains. I built a capsule wardrobe of mix-and-match professional outfits acquired during sales. I committed to meal prepping to resist the temptation of takeout and recorded every expense using a budgeting app. When colleagues invited me out for happy hours or weekend excursions, I often declined, using work commitments as a cover rather than revealing that I was saving nearly 70% of my take-home pay. Lucy, now a nurse at the university hospital, remained my closest friend and occasional source of wisdom. "You need some balance, Veronica," she would say during our monthly coffee meetups, which was my only regular indulgence. "Saving for the future is essential, but so is enjoying the present." She was correct. Yet finding that equilibrium was tough when the goal of home ownership felt paramount. It symbolized everything my parents had prevented me from achieving: stability, independence, and the definitive proof that their financial beliefs were misguided. Each dollar saved became a quiet act of defiance against their teachings. 3 years into my career, I encountered Daniel at a professional development event. A software engineer, he shared my analytical approach towards finances but had a healthier outlook on enjoying life in the present while preparing for the future. Our first date was a picnic in the park, where we connected over spreadsheets and retirement projections, discovering romance within compound interest calculations. I've never met anyone as enthusiastic about tax-advantaged accounts as I am, he admitted, looking both amused and thrilled. Daniel grasped my aspiration to buy a home without passing judgment. He had his own financial goals and appreciated my determination. As our relationship deepened, we kept our finances separate while supporting each other's objectives. He showed me minor ways to enjoy life without compromising my savings plan, opting for hiking trips instead of costly vacations and home-cooked gourmet dinners in place of dining out. My career steadily advanced, with promotions every few years, and each salary increase was funneled into my house fund rather than on lifestyle upgrades. By the 6th year of my tenure, I was elevated to the position of senior accountant, which came with a salary increase that accelerated my progress. My bond with Daniel strengthened. However, we opted against cohabitation, as my stringent saving practices would have unfairly limited his way of life. Concurrently, my relationship with my parents shifted into a distressing new chapter. After years of infrequent communication, they unexpectedly started reaching out much more. The reason became apparent during a holiday visit. They were seeking financial assistance. "We're facing some temporary cash flow issues," my father divulged during dinner at their notably more upscale rental than any place we resided in during my upbringing. "Just a short-term loan until our investments yield returns. $20,000 would suffice." I was taken aback by the request. Not only was it a hefty sum, but there was also an absence of acknowledgement regarding the irony of asking me for financial support after years of managing my money poorly. When I inquired for more information about their situation, their answers were vague and echoed the justifications they offered about my college fund long ago. I said I needed time to consider it, understanding that an outright denial could provoke a dramatic backlash. Once back home, I discussed this predicament with Daniel and Lucy. "This feels like history repeating itself," I confided. "I'm worried that if I give them money, it won't stop." After much thought, I refused their request, proposing instead to assist them in drafting a budget and a financial strategy. My father's reaction was one of cold anger, accusing me of disregarding their sacrifices. My mother called, crying, saying they might lose their rental home. I remained resolute, and eventually, the crisis mysteriously resolved without my financial help. 6 months later, they reached out again, this time asking for $15,000 for unspecified medical costs. I declined once more. 3 months after that, it was a request for $30,000 for a business opportunity my father wouldn't elaborate on. The pattern was unmistakable. My increasing financial security transformed how they viewed me, from a target for financial exploitation through control to a target through emotional manipulation. The final clarity came when a mutual acquaintance mentioned encountering my parents at an upscale resort in Florida during the period they claimed to be in financial distress. This coincided with a significant career milestone for me, as I was promoted to department manager, complete with a noteworthy raise and bonus. After 8 years of hard work, saving, and career growth, my house fund had significantly increased. Although the housing market in my area was competitive, it was not impossible, and mortgage rates were quite favorable. I started with serious neighborhood research, attending open houses on weekends, and consulting real estate professionals. Each step brought me closer to the objective I had been pursuing for nearly a decade and simultaneously widened the gap between my parents and me. I consciously chose not to inform them about my home search, recognizing that their response would likely be negative and potentially intrusive. By the 12th year of my career, at 32, everything aligned. My savings enabled me to make a 20% down payment, along with covering closing costs and maintaining an emergency fund. My excellent credit score, a result of consistent financial management, further elevated my mortgage application. I was prepared to realize my dream of owning a home, despite everything my parents had instilled about it being a poor financial choice. Receiving pre-approval for my mortgage felt surreal. After 12 years of hard work and discipline, I held in my hands the official confirmation from a bank affirming their trust in my financial responsibility by approving a loan for hundreds of thousands of dollars. I remember sitting in my vehicle outside the mortgage broker's office, staring at the documents and experiencing a unique blend of joy and vindication. Daniel was the first person I called. "Congratulations, house hunter," he exclaimed warmly. "This deserves a celebration, a reasonably priced one, of course." That weekend, we toasted with a bottle of champagne on my apartment balcony, marking the beginning of a new chapter in my life. The very next day, the serious task of house hunting commenced. I had a clear picture of what I desired, a modest two-bedroom home in a safe neighborhood, within a reasonable commute to my office. My real estate agent, Julia, was refreshingly honest about the market. "You might need to submit offers for several properties before one is accepted," she cautioned. "Try not to get too emotionally invested too quickly." This advice proved challenging to follow. The initial homes we viewed concealed significant issues behind their freshly painted surfaces, which my cautious nature couldn't overlook. While other homes were perfect and garnered offers significantly exceeding their asking prices within hours of being available, my 6-week search had yielded 3 rejected offers, leading me to fear that my ideal home might remain just a dream. Then Julia contacted me with news of a property that had yet to be listed officially. The owners needed a quick sale due to a job relocation, she indicated. The house was a 2-story in Riverside, featuring a modest backyard. It wasn't extravagant, but its sturdy construction was appealing and it had potential. She proposed review it the next day before it went on the market. It matched exactly what I had envisioned. Constructed in the 90s, it had been maintained well by the previous owners and had updated plumbing and electrical systems. Its layout was sensible, with an open living and dining area, a practical kitchen, 2 bedrooms on the upper floor, and a small fenced yard where I could picture hosting summer barbecues and perhaps starting a garden. The neighborhood was well established, with mature trees and an eclectic mix of families and professionals. That very evening, I made an offer that was slightly above the asking price yet still within my financial limits. After a short negotiation regarding the closing date, the sellers accepted my offer. The inspection only brought to light minor issues they agreed to resolve, and unexpectedly, the previously elusive home buying process began to progress smoothly. Daniel accompanied me to all meetings, providing moral support and an extra set of eyes on the numerous documents requiring signatures. "You're really doing this," he remarked during our final walkthrough. After 12 years of living off ramen and sacrificing social outings, the moment had come. The day of closing came with minimal excitement. I signed my name repeatedly, made the down payment and covered closing costs that reflected years of careful saving, and ultimately received the keys to my new home. As we strolled through the empty spaces, I felt a deep sense of accomplishment and tranquility. This was my space, earned through hard work, despite all the challenges encountered. Throughout this entire journey, I consciously chose to refrain from discussing the house with my parents. Our communication had dwindled after their 3rd attempt to lend money, reduced to sporadic holiday texts and brief conversations on birthdays. I wanted to prevent them from having any means to criticize or undermine my success. However, fate had different ideas. 2 weeks after I moved in, as I was still unpacking and determining which switches controlled the lights, my phone rang with my mother's number. "Veronica," she began abruptly, her voice tight with unrestrained emotion. "We've just had the most intriguing conversation with Barbara Thompson." My heart sank. Barbara Thompson was the mother of my high school classmate Amanda and lived just a few streets away from my new home. In our small town, such coincidences were not unusual. "She mentioned seeing you at the hardware store," my mother continued. "She congratulated us on your new house in Riverside. We were quite surprised to learn about such a significant life choice from someone we don't know well." I took a long breath, trying to devise a response that wouldn't escalate matters. I was going to tell you once I was settled. I misled, aware they would have attempted to dissuade me if they had known earlier. Well, we'll be there in 30 minutes, my father abruptly interrupted, seemingly on speakerphone. Text us the address. The call ended before I could protest. Those 30 minutes were filled with anxiety and frantic tidying. Daniel volunteered to remain for support, but I felt his presence would complicate an already delicate situation. I told him I needed to manage this on my own but asked him to stay reachable. My parents arrived promptly 30 minutes later, my father's silver SUV entering my driveway slowly and purposefully. They scrutinized the home's exterior with critical gazes before pressing the doorbell, as if visiting a stranger rather than their own daughter. Once they entered, the interrogation commenced. My father paced the living room, firing off questions about the purchase price, mortgage rate, and property taxes. My mother wandered through the rooms, wearing a mask of barely concealed disapproval, checking surfaces for dust and emitting small huffs at my simple furnishings. I can't believe you did this without consulting us, my father finally exclaimed, his volume rising. Given everything we taught you about the dangers of homeownership, this is the kind of rash decision we aim to keep you from. Rash? I echoed, incredulous. I've been saving for this for 12 years. I researched the market for 3 years. I put 20% down and secured a fixed-rate mortgage that's well within my means. You think I've been planning this behind your backs for years? My mother's tone was hurt, as if I had been scheming something illicit rather than achieving a typical adult milestone. I didn't share this with you because I anticipated this very reaction, I remarked, indicating their furious faces. I'm already 32. I don't require your approval for my financial choices. My father's complexion reddened. After everything we've sacrificed for you, all the financial lessons we've imparted, this is your way of thanking us? By spurning our advice and squandering your funds on this, a burden. He spat the last word with disdain. The disagreement intensified as they shifted from criticizing the property to questioning my decisions, my professional path, and, finally, my character. Each room they examined sparked further grievances. The kitchen was insufficiently spacious. The backyard would require excessive maintenance. The neighborhood was either declining or unjustifiably expensive, depending on who was speaking. The situation worsened when we arrived at the second bedroom, which I'd arranged as a home office. My father scrutinized my well-organized desk and bookshelves with narrowed eyes. You've accomplished a lot, he said, his tone abruptly shifting. This career we disapproved of has clearly been lucrative, and now you possess assets. The way he emphasized the final word sent a chill down my spine. You ought to show appreciation for our sacrifices in raising you, he continued. We invested everything in your future. And now that investment should yield returns. I gazed at him in disbelief. What are you implying? We're your parents, Veronica. We deserve to share in your success. We calculate that raising you cost about $400,000. Now that you're acquiring valuable property, it's time to talk about repayment. The discussion devolved into threats and demands. They insisted I either sell the house and give them half the proceeds or take out a home equity loan to settle my debt to them. When I rejected both options, my father issued the ultimatum that would change everything. If you refuse to acknowledge your financial responsibilities to us willingly, we have other avenues to explore. Don't forget, your mother and I have meticulous records of every dollar we spent on you. The courts will support our claim regarding your future. They departed with a stern warning. I had 1 week to do the appropriate thing before they would initiate legal proceedings. As their car drove away, I stood in the doorway of my new home, an achievement representing countless years of effort, now overshadowed by their toxic sense of entitlement. Little did I know they were dead serious about their threat, or how soon I'd find myself facing them, not just in my living room, but in a courtroom as well. 8 days after my parents' ultimatum, a courier arrived with an envelope that would turn everything upside down. The official court summons felt leaden in my grip, with legal language stating that Thomas and Sandra Thomas were suing their daughter Veronica Thomas for financial reimbursement related to parental support and unjust enrichment. I remained on my front steps for almost an hour, the documents trembling in my grasp, struggling to grasp the reality that my own parents were indeed taking me to court over purchasing a house. The lawsuit asserted that they were entitled to 50% of my home's appraised value as a return on investment for the financial and emotional support provided during my formative years. They sought a court order to either compel the sale of my home or require me to pay them half of its value. The legal filing included an itemized list of alleged expenses: food, clothing, shelter, education, medical care, transportation, extracurricular activities, and even a monetary value assigned to emotional support and guidance. Each category had estimated monthly costs multiplied over 18 years, including compound interest. The total they claimed to have invested in me exceeded $400,000. When I finally managed to call Daniel, my voice was barely understandable through my tears. "They actually did it," I gasped. "They're suing me. My own parents are suing me for buying a house." Daniel arrived within 20 minutes, accompanied by Lucy. They found me still on the steps, unable to process the shock of such a deep betrayal. "This is absurd," Lucy exclaimed after reviewing the documents. "Parents don't bill their children for raising them. That's not how family works." Daniel was already looking up information on his phone. "You need a good lawyer, Veronica. Even if this lawsuit seems absurd, you need to respond appropriately." The next morning, for the first time in my career, I called in sick to work and began reaching out to attorneys. After 3 consultations with lawyers who either appeared overly dismissive or too eager to escalate family drama, I found Jennifer Chang. Her thoughtful approach and clear knowledge of family law made her the obvious choice. "I've encountered similar cases before," Jennifer explained during our initial meeting. "Though often ineffective, such legal actions can be emotionally exhausting and costly. Parents sometimes attempt to seek financial reimbursement from their adult children, particularly when significant assets are at stake. Courts typically uphold that parents have a legal duty to support their minor children without expecting repayment." Despite her reassuring confidence, the journey ahead seemed intimidating. "We need to demonstrate your financial independence," she said. "Establish that you purchased the house solely with your own earnings and ideally show that your parents didn't offer major financial help throughout your adulthood or assist in acquiring your home." The ensuing weeks were chaotic, filled with legal preparations and emotional distress. I took a week off work to compile necessary documents: tax returns from my college years, records of scholarships and financial aid, bank statements demonstrating my consistent saving habits, and mortgage application documents indicating I had no cosigners or financial aid for my down payment. My supervisor, Alan, was unexpectedly sympathetic when I briefly shared my situation. "Family monetary disputes can often be worse than divorces," he remarked kindly. "Take the time you need and let me know if you require me to testify about your income and job history." My coworkers stepped up to manage my projects during my absence, providing support that highlighted the distinction between chosen family and biological relations. Daniel dedicated his evenings to assist me in organizing my documents, while on weekends, he kept my mind off the impending court date with outdoor hikes and simple, cost-free activities. Lucy, who worked night shifts, visited during her days off to help sift through old financial statements and lend emotional support. "Their actions reflect on them, not on you," she frequently reassured me. "You're not to blame for this." However, despite this support network, my mental health deteriorated. I started experiencing symptoms of anxiety, sleeplessness, decreased appetite, and trouble focusing at work. The home I had diligently earned seemed no longer a safe haven but rather a source of unease, as every creak and sound in the night echoed my parents' approach to reclaim what I had worked for. On Jennifer's advice, I began sessions with Dr. Patel, a therapist focusing on familial trauma. Our discussions unveiled behavioral patterns I had come to normalize, yet realized were profoundly dysfunctional. "What you're describing is financial abuse," she stated during our second session. Your parents' previous control over your finances as a minor, their attempts to oversee your accounts as an adult, and now this lawsuit indicate a recurring theme of wielding money as a means of control rather than honoring your independence. This perspective offered understanding of my parents' actions, yet it did not alleviate the sting of their betrayal. The lawsuit felt like a stark affirmation that they perceived me not as a cherished daughter, but as an asset to exploit. Nights were particularly challenging when defenses waned and doubt infiltrated my thoughts. Had I been ungrateful? Did I genuinely owe them for my upbringing? Was there a moral obligation beyond legal responsibilities? Dr. Patel guided me through these dilemmas, distinguishing true gratitude from obligatory acquiescence and differentiating healthy familial interdependence from toxic entitlement. Children don't choose to be born, she reminded me. Parents decide to have children and are legally mandated to support them until they reach adulthood. Love should be unconditional, not a bill to settle. As the court date loomed, my anxiety reached its peak. Jennifer expressed confidence in our legal stance but cautioned me about the emotional challenges of the proceedings. They will likely make claims that feel personal. Remember, the court focuses on legal facts, not emotional arguments. Stay factual and composed, regardless of what they say. The evening before the hearing, I found solace in my backyard, watching the sunset paint the horizon in pink and gold hues. This small plot symbolized everything I had fought for, every sacrifice, every additional shift, and every social event declined. It represented more than mere property. It embodied my emancipation from the financial exploitation I had faced since childhood. As night enveloped the sky, I promised myself that, no matter the court's outcome, I would no longer permit my parents' twisted view of money to dictate my self-worth or happiness. Their lawsuit had severed our remaining ties, and perhaps that clean break was essential for my healing to commence. Tomorrow would reveal whether I retained my home, but today, I had already reclaimed my self-value from their toxic control. The county courthouse loomed large, constructed from granite and marble, its formal design serving as a tangible reminder of the gravity associated with legal matters. I arrived an hour and a half ahead of schedule, as suggested by Jennifer, dressed in a conservative navy suit that conveyed professionalism and reliability. Daniel and Lucy occupied the gallery to lend moral support, while my parents and their attorney were seated on the opposite side of the courtroom, deliberately avoiding any contact. My father wore his court suit, the same attire he donned for funerals and other solemn events. My mother's choice of a muted floral dress gave her a more vulnerable and maternal appearance, deviating from her usual style. Their appearances were clearly crafted to reinforce a narrative of devoted parents wronged by an ungrateful daughter. Judge Harriet Morales, a woman in her 60s with silver-streaked hair and piercing eyes, began proceedings right on schedule. After reviewing the case documents, she looked between both parties, her expression indicating familiarity with such family conflicts and finding them equally disconcerting. Before we continue, she began, I want to emphasize that disagreements about money within families are best addressed through mediation, not litigation. Has mediation been attempted in this case? Mr. Donovan, my parents' attorney, quickly stood. Your Honor, the defendants rejected all opportunities for private resolution, forcing my clients to seek judicial relief. Jennifer responded immediately, that is not correct, Your Honor. The plaintiff's version of resolution involved demanding 50% of my client's home's value with no legal justification. There was no genuine negotiation at all. Judge Morales nodded, jotting notes before proceeding. Understood. Let's move on to opening statements. Plaintiff first. Mr. Donovan presented my parents' case with calculated emotional appeal. He characterized them as dedicated parents who had devoted everything to their only child, sacrificing their financial stability for my opportunities. He claimed they even gave up homeownership to focus resources on my growth and education. According to their story, my achievements were due solely to their sacrifices, and my refusal to share my success was deemed unjust. The plaintiffs are not asking for anything more than fair compensation for their significant investment in the defendant's future, he concluded. They supported her for 18 years and now merely sought a reasonable return for that investment in their retirement years. When it was Jennifer's turn, she took a factual and systematic approach. She detailed my financial independence since I was 18, illustrating how I juggled multiple jobs while maintaining a full college course load. She pointed out that I had not received any financial help from my parents for education, housing, or any other expenses since my high school graduation. Most notably, she stressed that I had purchased my house entirely with the income one earned after saving over 12 years. Your Honor, there is no legal foundation for the plaintiff's claim, she stated firmly. Parents are legally required to support their minor children without expectation of repayment. Miss Thomas acquired her home with her own earned, saved funds with no financial input from the plaintiffs. Additionally, we will show that instead of providing support, the plaintiffs actually took significant portions of Miss Thomas's earnings during her teenage years, supposedly for her education, which were never returned or accounted for. Judge Morales appeared particularly engaged by this last point, making further notes before signaling the start of the testimony phase. My parents took the stand first, each recounting their perspective of my upbringing while underscoring their financial sacrifices. My father presented spreadsheets estimating the costs associated with raising me, while my mother shared emotional anecdotes about foregoing vacations and luxury items to meet my needs. During cross-examination, Jennifer systematically deconstructed their narrative. She interrogated my father about the 70% contribution he had demanded from my teenage earnings, asking where that money went and why it had never been returned. She challenged my mother regarding their frequent vacations and the collection of designer handbags, which contradicted their claims of financial strain. Most effectively, she extracted confirmation from them that they had offered no financial support for my college education, despite their assertion that it was part of their investment. When it was my turn to testify, Jennifer guided me through the account of my financial journey. I recounted my experience of juggling several jobs during college while upholding a strong GPA, detailing the scholarships and financial aid I independently obtained, as well as the disciplined savings plan I adhered to for 12 years in order to purchase my house. I submitted bank statements demonstrating consistent deposits from reputable employers and the steady increase of my savings through regular contributions, not large gifts or unforeseen monetary gains. The most impactful testimony, however, came from unexpected sources. Professor Benjamin Wilson traveled 3 hours to serve as a character witness, vouching for my academic performance despite my multiple jobs and affirming that I didn't receive any financial assistance from my parents during my studies. He insisted Veronica was one of my most committed students. She frequently arrived at class weary from overnight work, yet she maintained outstanding grades through determination. He also noted that I frequently mentioned my completely self-sufficient status, as my parents believed in the significance of financial independence. Mrs. Castillo, my old neighbor from high school, testified to witnessing me leave for early morning jobs before classes and work late hours throughout my adolescence. I often saw her waiting for the bus in her grocery store uniform at 5:30 a.m. on weekends, she recalled. Number 16-year-old works those hours unless absolutely necessary. The most damaging testimony for my parents' case came from Mr. Peterson, the manager of my high school grocery store position. He had kept detailed records and distinctly remembered me due to an unusual incident. He explained, Veronica's father asked us to deposit her checks into an account he controlled. I refused, as company policy prevented paying underage employees directly unless legally obligated. Mr. Peterson noted that the father was adamant about controlling her earnings. As the testimony proceeded, Judge Morales's demeanor grew visibly concerned regarding my parents' financial manipulation. The pivotal moment arose during the redirect examination of my father when Jennifer inquired about certain investments involving my college fund. You previously stated that you invested Veronica's college fund for her benefit, Jennifer began. Do you have documentation supporting these investments and their current worth? My father fidgeted. Those records would be challenging to find after all these years. Did you have separate accounts for these funds, or were they mixed with your personal finances? We used a unified investment strategy for efficiency. So, you deposited Veronica's earnings into your own accounts for management purposes? Yes. And when Veronica required this money for college, you told her it was unavailable. Where were these funds at that time? At that moment, my father's restraint finally broke. We had household expenses. We supported her for 18 years. That money compensated us for everything we invested in her. A stunned silence filled the courtroom following his outburst. Leaning forward, Judge Morales' expression turned stern. Mr. Thomas, are you asserting that you used your daughter's earnings for your own purposes while claiming you were saving them for her education? My father's desperate attempts to retract his statement only exacerbated his situation. By the conclusion of Jennifer's questioning, the true nature of my parents' financial relationship with me was unambiguously apparent to everyone present. After a brief recess, Judge Morales delivered her ruling, struggling to mask her disapproval. The court finds no legal grounds for the plaintiff's assertion of entitlement to the defendant's property. Parents are legally obligated to support their minor children without anticipation of financial compensation. The evidence clearly indicates that Miss Thomas acquired her home using funds she earned independently, with no help from the plaintiffs. She added, moreover, the evidence suggests that the plaintiffs may have unfairly appropriated the defendant's teenage earnings under false pretenses. While this matter is outside the scope of today's proceedings, the court acknowledges that Miss Thomas might have grounds for a separate claim regarding those funds if she decides to pursue it. The case was dismissed with prejudice, precluding my parents from refiling the same claim. Judge Morales also uniquely mandated that my parents cover my legal fees due to the frivolous and vexatious nature of their lawsuit. As the courtroom began to clear, I remained seated, engulfed in a whirlwind of conflicting feelings. The legal victory felt insignificant against the finality of the estrangement from my family it signified. My parents departed without a word, my father's expression rigid with anger while my mother refused to meet my gaze. I emerged victorious in the legal battle, retaining my home, yet I lost the chance for reconciliation with those who should have celebrated my success rather than trying to appropriate it. As Jennifer packed her briefcase, she offered insights that would influence my future. Family should uplift, not undermine you. Sometimes, the healthiest family is the one you choose rather than the one you were born into. Observing Daniel and Lucy patiently waiting by the door, I recognized the truth in her words. The family that genuinely supported me was not the one suing me for my achievements, but rather the one celebrating them. The days immediately following the court's decision were filled with a whirlwind of mixed emotions. I felt relief that my home was safe, juxtaposed with sorrow over the definitive collapse of my familial relationships. The judge's ruling brought vindication, yet doubts lingered about whether I could have altered this outcome. While the legal struggle concluded, the emotional repercussions were just beginning. In the initial week, I immersed myself in physical work around the house, painting walls, and setting up furniture until sheer exhaustion forced me to sleep. It felt simpler to focus on concrete tasks rather than confront the painful truth that my parents had actually sued me for striving to attain financial independence on my own terms. Each enhancement to the home was both a rebellious act and a healing one, affirming that this space belonged to me despite their efforts to take it away. You know, you don't have to do everything at once, Daniel gently remarked one night as he found me sanding cabinet doors at midnight. The house isn't going anywhere. Neither am I. His unwavering presence served as my anchor during those chaotic initial weeks. He knew when I required solitude and when I sought companionship, bringing takeout on evenings when cooking felt like too much and quietly working nearby on his laptop when I couldn't be alone with my thoughts, never pressuring me for commitments or decisions about our relationship, instead consistently showing up and demonstrating through deeds rather than words that not everyone who loves you keeps a tally of what they are owed in return. Lucy organized a small housewarming gathering a month after the court decision, inviting only those who understood the situation and supported me without reservations. Professor Wilson arrived with a houseplant and shared wisdom. Your parents taught you who not to become. That was a vital lesson, albeit not the one they intended. My colleagues brought practical gifts, leaving work discussions for the office. For a few hours, laughter resonated in the rooms that had recently been filled with stress and tears. As the summer advanced, I began attending a support group for adults confronting dysfunctional family dynamics. Listening to others' stories of parental manipulation, control, and betrayal helped me realize that my own experiences were not unique. I recognized I wasn't alone in having parents who saw children as investments rather than individuals to nurture. Establishing boundaries to protect myself did not mark me as ungrateful or flawed. Family estrangement can sometimes be the healthiest route, the group facilitator pointed out during one particularly tough session. Perpetuating toxic relationships out of obligation only serves to reinforce damaging patterns. Sometimes, love requires walking away until genuine change happens, even if that change never does. Gradually, I began to transform my house into a true home, room by room. The living room turned into a space for game nights with friends, while the kitchen, which once triggered anxiety over scarcity, became a venue for creativity and abundance, as I learned to prepare meals that nourished me instead of merely sustaining me. I even cultivated a small vegetable garden in the backyard, with each growing plant symbolizing patience and care. Perhaps most importantly, I revamped the spare bedroom from a makeshift office into a versatile area that mirrored my shifting priorities. One corner showcased a cozy reading chair next to bookshelves filled with financial knowledge I wished I'd had in my youth. Another boasted a desk for creative endeavors rather than just work. The walls displayed photographs of chosen family and accomplishments I took pride in, serving as a visual reminder of my growth. 6 months after the court ruling, I received an unexpected letter from my mother. Inside was not the apology I might have hoped for, but a request to meet and resolve the unpleasantness. There was no acknowledgement of wrongdoing, nor was there an indication that their fundamental viewpoint had shifted. After consulting with Dr. Patel, I replied with clear boundaries. I would contemplate rebuilding our relationship only if they showed understanding of why their actions were damaging and respected my autonomy moving forward. Their response was revealing in its silence. My boundaries seemed to be too significant a barrier for reconciliation. Although the finality of this understanding brought renewed sorrow, it also provided insight. I realized I couldn't alter my parents or change their perception of me from being an object to an individual. The only aspect I could modify was my reaction to them and the inclusions in my life. As the year mark of owning my home neared, Daniel surprised me with a personalized doormat that stated earned, not given. This small act of empathy moved me to tears and clarified the most significant lesson from this difficult journey. Real security is derived not from what others hand us, but rather from what we construct ourselves, layer by layer, decision by decision, day by day. The financial knowledge I gained from this experience felt necessary to share. With Professor Wilson's support, I started volunteering at a nearby community center, teaching fundamental financial literacy to young adults transitioning out of foster care and others lacking family financial support. Assisting these individuals in grasping sound financial boundaries and essential skills for independence transformed my suffering into purpose. You explain this content differently, one participant remarked after a workshop on responsibly building credit, recognizing how daunting it can be to navigate finances without proper guidance. That feedback led to more workshops, eventually evolving into a regular series backed by local credit unions. The curriculum I designed specifically catered to financial independence for those facing difficult family circumstances, encompassing not only practical skills but also the emotional and psychological facets of money often ignored in standard financial education. Today, my home truly belongs to me in every aspect. The mortgage payments symbolize liberty rather than a burden. Every space reflects decisions driven by desire instead of denial. The financial discipline I once saw as a restrictive necessity has changed into a means for crafting the life I genuinely wish for, free from the expectations or demands of others. Daniel and I are now engaged, envisioning a future that respects both unity and independence. We're exploring ways to merge our households while upholding healthy financial boundaries, fostering a relationship based on mutual respect rather than control or obligation. The lessons drawn from my parents' behavior constantly remind me of the relationship patterns we consciously choose to sidestep. However, the most significant transformation has occurred within me. I no longer seek validation or approval from those who cannot provide it. I now realize that family is defined by shared care and respect, rather than solely by blood ties. Most crucially, I have learned that love isn't transactional and genuine gifts don't come with strings attached. If you're watching and grappling with similar family dynamics related to money or control, remember you are not alone. Setting healthy boundaries is not selfish, it is vital for your well-being. Your accomplishments are yours alone, and no one holds the right to claim them. Have you dealt with financial control or coercion from family? How did you respond? Please share your experiences in the comments section. If this resonates with you, kindly click the like button and subscribe for more sincere discussions about managing challenging family dynamics. Thank you for hearing my story, and remember, your value isn't defined by what others can take from you, but by what you choose to create for yourself.